Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Hit Refresh Business Resilience in a Post-COVID World, presented jointly by Mint and SAP. I am Rodra Bhattacharya, and I welcome you to a virtual panel discussion on strategies for business continuity post the pandemic. We are living at a day and age when social dynamics and consumer behavior have been completely altered. Organizations currently face numerous challenges, and irregular supply and demand just being one of the issues we need to solve. With the scenario expected to stay uncertain for a while, what strategy should key stakeholders adopt to maintain business continuity? I will let our experts answer the same for you. I'm very happy to introduce the thought leaders on the panel today, starting with Mr. B. Ramakrishnan, CEO, Shinlak Paints Limited, Mr. Jaydeep Shekhar, Managing Director, Asia and EMEAR, Terex India Private Limited, Mr. Preetham Lalwani, Managing Director of Prayag Nutri Products Private Limited, Mr. Vinod Palakil, South Regional Director, Sales at SAP India, Dr. Udayant Malhotra, Autobi, Managing Director, Dynamics Technologies Limited, and Mr. Ravi Murthy, Plant Head and Senior Vice President at SGD Pharma India. Without further ado, let's get started. I would like to start with a question for all our speakers. If you had to highlight the top three challenges sort of faced by you in the last 9 months, what would these be? Mr. Murthy, maybe if you could start.
Okay, so it's always easy to speak first because, we can say the original part. And I can say, that while businesses have been affected, to a varying degree, but one thing is common, and then that is, the day-to-day operational challenges we have to face. There is a long list of things, that are problematic to us, but I personally, would like to highlight the fact that, the one-to-one contact between employee and us, and, that is something that I'm missing the most. In operations, the days are very tough sometimes, and you would like to unwind, talk to people, sit, share a meal, and that is something, kind of brings down the stress levels. So this one-to-one interaction, that is the most important facet of team building and building, a camaraderie among people. So that is something that is missing. And I believe, going forward to be able to engage people and, bring everybody together and keep the morale high, that is going to be a challenge going forward. And apart from that, I believe the uncertainty that Corona brings in is that people, suddenly don't turn up, they get quarantined, and for a longer period of times, because it is not a 7-day or 8-day flu. So once somebody is found positive, there is a 15-day period, and then after, even if it's tested negative, you have another 7 days of this mandatory quarantine. So this can be, also a challenging aspect. So I believe, these are some things which are very prominent, on day-to-day operations. The technology part that you mentioned, that when we speak on Teams or Zoom, we are able to communicate and express our points. But sometimes, physical contact is required, like I mentioned, not only from employee to employee, but also customer to, vendor. So that interaction is also minimized now. So most of the audits that are happening online, and any issues and claims that have to be dealt online. So that is also perhaps a little bit of challenge, I think. So these are my main 2 or 3 challenges that I face, apart from the rest.
Interesting. We have in the series that we are doing, we've actually had two opposite views on this. Some people feel that this virtual interaction is actually great because you get to save a lot of time, get to do a lot more in that particular time. But then there's also this view that what you miss out. This is what you said, right? What you miss out instead is actually of a lot more value. The soft side of these interactions is significant. Mr. Dr. Malhotra, if you would like to add to that, three top challenges faced by you in the last 9 months.
Okay, so everyone has the normal headlines of COVID and the economic crisis and lockdown and all the kind of restrictions we've had. For us, we actually operated we never had a lockdown. I've been working from March 27th itself. We were declared an essential service. So what was the bigger challenge for us was to keep our workforce healthy. So we cooperated along with the government of Karnataka and the Indian Institute of Science, and we're very fortunate to be in Bangalore. we were able to extract out very early. In fact, in the middle of March itself, before the lockdown, we started testing all our people. And we actually have our own COVID test lab with full swab testing, RT-PCR testing within our campus. So 2,000 people in our company, we test every fortnight. I've been tested 29 times so far. We've been very fortunate in kind of helping people learn the behaviors that are required. So in the beginning, when we were introducing ourselves, I had my mask. Actually, everybody is masked up, and although we're all tested, and it's so partly keeping ourselves safe has been the biggest learning for us. And it's also been a very good opportunity, because when competitors of ours were shut down, not just during a lockdown, but post the lockdown with a lot of infections or people fearful of coming to work, we were running full steam. And for our customers, that's been pretty good. Some of them, we were able to actually develop new products in the last 9 months digitally. So we developed a whole new set of products for Boeing, actually 2 sets of products. We developed products for our Indian defense customers. And we're the world's largest producer of hydraulic gear pumps as well. We were able to actually increase our market share because our primary competitor, the number 2, a big, very large, well-known German company, was struggling with the COVID deliveries. So I think the opportunities are the flip side of the challenges, and I think all of us are learning.
Very interesting. So you went on a full sort of drive to make sure that setting up your own testing lab within your facilities is a major step. That must have required a lot of certification and stuff. Because
we're fully certified. But India is very positive. So the government, we work closely right from the beginning with the state government and the Indian Institute of Science, and of course we're ICMR approved and NABL approved, and we have qualifications, so our certificates work even in our plants overseas, because we operate plants in Europe as well.
Very interesting. Mr. Shekhar, would you like to add to that? I mean, my question is essentially, what are the 3 top challenges faced by you in the last few months? But please take it the way.
Yeah, I mean, for us at Terex, safety of the team members has been the biggest challenge. Something was similar to Mr. Malhotra said, but that remains the biggest challenge is to make sure that everybody remains safe. If we don't have any case of transmission within the factory premises, we keep our team members safe while they are traveling, because while we are a manufacturing industry, we also have to serve our customers. We have service guys traveling across the country. And again, we work into infrastructure segment and mining segment, wherein, there has been a lot of focus from the government in terms of building the roads while the lockdown was happening. So something similar to Mr. Malhotra's business, we never really stopped. We were under shutdown for a few weeks. But beyond that, then we had a series of people traveling across the country. So I think, making sure that everybody remains safe while traveling, while staying in an unknown place, and making sure that there is no person-to-person transmission occurring in our factory premises, that has been the biggest challenge. And that continues because, while the cases have come down, the threat still remains. And I believe that this is going to remain even for the next 6 to 9 months' time, even with the vaccines in. So making sure that the team members are suitably educated in terms of social distancing, in terms of hand hygiene, in terms of importance of maintaining the same kind of priorities when they go back home and with their families, because, somebody can get an infection in the community and then get back into the factory. So that was a big challenge. That still remains a big challenge. The good thing is that, we have been successful in avoiding any transmission within the premises, but we still have cases from the community, but we have been good enough in terms of identifying them very early and kind of quarantining them. The other challenge which we faced was obviously supply chain disruptions, right? While we were working full force and, as a large corporation, we were geared up in terms of keeping the factory premises safe. All our suppliers were not that lucky, and a lot of suppliers had to shut down because of frequent COVID outbreaks and the government restrictions. So, and even then, some of them did not have any COVID restriction, but then they were local lockdowns, like, we operate near Bangalore, Chennai, Hosur, and Chennai was into extended lockdown period wherein a lot of our suppliers are located. So that was a concern. It was a concern for the first 6 months time. I must say it has become much more better now, but still we are seeing the effects of that, 5-6 months of disruption still coming and hitting us, every month in something or other. And the third thing which we faced, and again, this is a continuing issue, is the cash flow disruptions or the cash flow issues with the medium and small scale industries, right, who are our vendor base. A lot of those MSME companies are our vendor base. So we have seen some of them struggling with the cash flow. On the other side, when we are working with a lot of customers who are in the mining or infrastructure segment, a lot of those customers or retail customers who are mostly into the commercial querying side, they had issues with their cash flow. So managing the cash flows on both sides of the spectrum, one on your customer side, one on the supplier side, has been the third biggest challenge. And again, I'll say all these three challenges, while this has been mitigated to a certain extent in the last few months' time, in the last 1 or 2 months' time, it has become better. But these three still continue to kind of hamper and challenge you, sometimes daily, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly. So these three remain still a concern for us.
Okay, so some of these challenges have not completely sort of gone out of the system. You're saying there is legacy issues that are still there because of the supply chain disruption. I'm sure a lot of global supply chains have been severely disrupted.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the threat of the virus infection has not gone away. It has come down, it has not gone away. Supply chain disruptions, the lockdowns has gone away, but there are container shortages, right? Because the global trade there has been an imbalance, right? There's less imports happening, more exports happening. China, there is less exports happening. Because of the Brexit, there is a container shortage in the UK ports, right? Southampton port is choked. There has been a strike in Colombo port, wherein the ships are now kind of not stopping at Colombo port. So the ships which are not going to Colombo are not coming to Chennai port, right? So there is a trade imbalance in the sense, like, so the supply chain disruption is not only really the component, it can also be your logistics challenges. So right now, the component challenges has come down, but the container challenges have gone up because, you also import some of the components from the suppliers in Europe and UK. And the cash flow issues, while it is getting better, I still believe, it is going to continue for the next 6 months' time. I think the government has done its part in terms of supporting the MSME. But, people will take time to come back on their own feet back into, where they were pre-COVID times.
And the business confidence also takes a little.
And the business confidence is picking up, especially in our industry. There's a lot of focus on the infra side by the government. So we haven't really seen a huge drop. I mean, frankly speaking, on a year-to-year speaking, our business has gone up from 2019 to 2020 in terms of the backlogs and the order bookings, right? Because again, there's a lot of focus on infra. And I also believe the government also possibly knows that, one of the largest employers of non-skilled labor is the infra sector, right? So if they keep the infra sector running, a lot of these issues related to the migrant labor and, job guarantees for the unskilled labor can also be taken care of. So we have been thankfully in an industry where it has not been badly hit, but yeah, cash flow issues remain. Yeah.
Mr. Lalwani, your thoughts here. What are the three top challenges faced by you in the last few months?
Actually, as I told you that I am into food processing industry. Initially, yes, after this lockdown period started, we faced a lot of difficulty for a month or so, since all our laborers had gone, all our migrants, they had gone back to their home and all, So we had very few laborers left over, but the demand was there. But after 2 months, all the laborers have come back, and now we are running full swing, all the 24 hours with full capacity. And as I told you that we are into confectionery, the confectionery business has not gone down, but there is a lot of challenges of unorganized companies, small companies coming into the market and trying to disturb in terms of competition. But we try to give the best of the product to our customers with a reasonable price so that we sustain our business. Well, initially for 2-3 months we had a little problem, but after that, after June, July, the business has come back to its original level. Even today also, the business is going very good. But as I told you that because of the competition, we have to be very, very alert. We have to be right on our toes to hit the competition and give a good product to our customers and try to sustain our business. As I told you that I have about 2,000 workers working with me and about 200 managerial level people. So the cost in our industry is too high. So hence we would like to go in for a volume business. And as I told you, we pack about 40 million candies a day. And we are manufacturing as of now 6,000 tons of confectionery every month. Apart from this, I'm happy to tell you that I'm also a partner to ITC. We make confectionery for ITC under their brand name called Candyman. And we are the first to introduce Candyman in India way back in 2002. And still, even today, about 800 to 1,000 tons every month we supply to ITC also.
Okay.
And as I told you, everything is good now, normal. We are not finding any difficulty in running the business.
Great. That's
Thank
good,
you.
Mr. Lalwani. Mr. Ramakrishnan, your thoughts on this, the challenges of the last few months? I mean, what are the top three if you want to sort of call them out?
I think even on this panel, we have a very diverse industry. So I'm sure there are some parts of this difficulty phase that you've gone through really common to all of us. There are a few which are very distinct to a particular industry. I would guess, all the industries have faced three challenges. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, we have had a social challenge, we've had a financial challenge, and we had a health and hygiene crisis, right? Which possibly you had never seen in this country before. I've been, doing business continuity plan documents for well over 3 decades for at least a couple of multinational companies that I've worked. And I don't recollect that we even remotely ever thought about such a risk occurring in the world ever. So I think the COVID has taught us not about the predictability, it's really taught us about lack of preparedness. I think all of us were not prepared for this. That was the ground reality, I guess. So let me dwell with one or two points related to the industry where I come from, right? And from where Jaideep mentioned, one of the biggest hits that has happened because of this pandemic is the infrastructure industry. That suffered the most, and that suffered more from the social pattern rather than from the economic and financial pattern, because you had a huge amount of migrant laborers crisscrossing the country, because a lot of them actually serve the infrastructure industry. So in a company like us, we run 3 plants in Chennai. We employ close to about 300 people, on a contract labor basis to do various parts of paint manufacturing. And that's one part of the story. If you connect this industry to various other things, you have the painter, you have somebody who comes home and paints it. So I think one of the biggest challenges has been, how do we deal with this situation when you're not able to get a person who has to come to your place and paint? No more you're welcoming him, because you're obviously worried what will he bring along with him. I think one of the biggest challenges in this whole industry, including our company, which I think overcame this very, very well, but how do we present our products to the consumer now that sitting in his drawing room, he has the comfort to say that virtually he can now get his home freshly painted, and with technologies which can obviously also take care of some amount of antiviral and antibacterial. So that is one big challenge which we overcome, because the product itself was being challenged at that point of time. There are a few other things which I think my other colleagues also raised, like paint manufacturing is a very raw material intensive industry. So about 30% of our raw materials come from within India, and about 30 to 40% remaining fair amount of reagents come from overseas. They come from Europe, a lot from China, because we had, most industry in India had developed the sourcing from China. So that is all impacted. So there was a lot of supply chain issue. And then there are obviously issues related to what you face internally in the company. I think large as well as smaller organizations, especially manufacturing organizations, are still not used to working from home concept, unlike an IT company where you can possibly implement it very, very fast and very quickly, because you have modular methods of working. and you need interface between departments or between people. Like as we said, we don't have the work. People don't meet each other to understand what's happening in each other's area. So working in teams, working from homes was a challenge. That was the other aspect. I think over the last couple of months, we have also been facing this anxiety about how long this is going to continue. Right? Because as somebody said, that we may have overcome the problem to some extent, we're still not out of it. We still have the necessity to be prepared. So I think there is a lot amount of HR issues, human resources issues, which need to be tackled. So I think I would broadly put this into 3 boxes,
Right.
as I said. So those possibly would be my quick thoughts to your question.
So, I mean, a quick question on the supply chain part. I mean, have you tried to sort of, and this also applies to many of our other panelists, but many companies are looking at local supply chain, sort of rebuilding the model to look at companies and building that supply chain or the vendors in India rather than, because, obviously the China case has been not only because of COVID, but other issues as well, right? I mean, importing from China has been very challenging. It's not going to change anytime soon.
So let me quickly respond. So I think we did 2 things. We obviously have developed a lot of small and medium scale manufacturers, which we wouldn't have looked at had we not gone through this crisis, because I think we had the difficulty of collaborating with them to make those products. But we did that. So I think one of the learnings is that we have made ourselves more self-sufficient, because we are a sort of a chemical company. We do reactions. So at the N-1 stage, N-2 stage, obviously, we have people who can do it for us, either in Chennai or in Gujarat or somewhere. That's one thing we did. We also found mechanisms of doing things differently. Right? So any of these things obviously challenges you to look for alternate, materials that are available, because basically in chemicals, you do have the scope of finding those. So formulations became far more indigenized, localized. They became value engineered to suit the current environment. So absolutely, you're right. And as we are out of this pandemic, I'm sure our ability to really source locally will become far better.
Great. Mr. Parakil, I mean, coming to you, so we spoke about obviously supply chain challenges. We spoke about the people, keeping people safe, labor shortages, maintaining business continuity as a result of that, also financial challenges. So which are the areas do you feel that technology can sort of intervene to solve for, to help our businesses stay resilient in these difficult times?
It is digital mandate, right? It isn't new to any one of us, any of the businesses. It's just been simply now put into a sharp focus. Prior to the pandemic also, there is a paradigm shift towards digitization, which was already underway. Now the current events have actually accelerated this paradigm, and we can actually see a marquee shift in spending that is happening towards digital businesses, right? That's up for all of us to see. So hence, what's important is to choose the right digital initiative that has the maximum impact to the business and in the quickest possible time. So I would say if organization already has a stable digital core, then improvement can be done in areas of, like we spoke, in the supply chain, where technology can play a huge role, in marketing, in manufacturing, sales, service, etc. Else, I think the prime importance for any organization is to have a single integrated digital core that can set the foundation for many things that an organization can do. See, especially in a future that looks very, very different from the pre-pandemic stage, right? I think the mantra, what I have personally seen now in the last 8 or 9 months, dealing with a lot of CEOs and MDs and interacting with a lot of our existing customers, right? They feel that being fast and furious is the name of the game when it comes to digital innovation. But at the same time, fast and frantic can also lead to mistakes. So what's important is choosing the right partnerships to make this journey a huge success, to ensure that this opportunity or window that all of us have got, how do we put it to use by using technology to get that niche or advantage when compared to one's competitors.
Mr. Malhotra, I wanted to sort of take this thread further with you. I mean, for a high technology business such as yours, I mean, definitely, digitization has been always been top of the agenda for a while, right? I mean, you have automotive, you have metallurgical components, aerospace components that you are making, and so what from a manufacturing viewpoint, what have been some of the digital strategies that have sort of been consistent across your segments, and how have you in this last 9 months have things changed? Have you added new sort of processes from a technology point of view to make your life and process a little better, easier, simpler in these difficult times?
So we've always been digital in the sense that you'll be surprised. I don't even use a laptop or a computer anymore for 5 years. I'm completely mobile. I travel all the time. All my data is on my in my pocket devices. Our business is very, all our design, engineering has been digitized fully from the early 90s. And so that has been the core of our production cycle, from procurement to production and the interactions we have with our customers. All the accounting, all the financial flows, all the quality management systems are fully digital. What we've tried to do over the last, and we of course have ERPs. Now, what we've tried to do in the last 9-10 months is try and migrate all of these things to become harmonized so that we can have people work remotely. You see, we've been working at work. We've not been working from home, but we have manufacturing plants that are interlinked in Bangalore, Chennai, Bristol, Swindon, and a place called Schwarzenberg in Germany. So while we've all been working at work, we've been working remotely in groups of people. And what we've been trying to do is bring these digital processes, and which are, in a way, which we never realized earlier were siloed. We're trying to bring them together and harmonize them. That's what we're trying to do.
Very interesting. So there were different processes running. You're sort of connecting all of that so everybody can be on the same sort of platform, and these processes can interact with each other. I think that's
yeah. Actually, I'll just go one step further. So we are in the process. Where I am right now is I'm sitting in a campus called Dynamatic Park, and in the morning I did a groundbreaking for a second factory at Dynamatic Aerotropolis, which is adjacent to the Bangalore airport. Now, this is 5 acres. It's our old site. It's been my office for 35 years. That is 30 acres at the airport, much bigger, better roads.
Is it?
The new Bangalore airport. So we are migrating everything from here in the next 18 months to that new site. What is very interesting is that the white collar component of space will be smaller there and more informal there than you have here. And I think a part of the new architecture is more co-working, less compartmentalization, and more collaborative, which is digital. The collaboration is digital. So the idea is that in our new facility, and this is an idea, by the way, being developed not by us 55-year-olds or the 45-year-old guys who run the business, not even the 35-year-olds, but by our 25-year-old rising stars that we have. They have envisioned the future for us, and we've asked them how they would like the business to look in 10 years. And we kind of contextualize it with this COVID situation, and it'll be very fluid. It's more, I think if you look at the world as we are trying to build our world, it's going to be more collaborative digitally. It's going to be at the core of everything.
Very interesting. I think I really love the last part that you mentioned. I mean, 25-year-old young sort of engineers, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, if they are giving sort of the direction, I think this really speaks about the thought process and the culture that you're trying to build into the company. I think that's great, Mr. Shekhar. I mean, just coming to you now. Manufacturing across industries, of course, taken a hard hit due to the COVID crisis. What kind of digital tools have helped you manage this, your plans and ensure the well-being of your employees as they sort of work through it? What have you employed? Have you, and similar question, right? I mean, have you sort of introduced new things in the last 9 months that have helped you tackle?
Yeah, I mean, for us, being part of a large global corporation, digital, we are already digital, it is certain aspects of the business which was not the highest priority has now been put into the priorities side. I was reading somewhere else that, probably the progress which was supposed to happen in digitization in the next 3 to 4 years time has all been bundled together in the last 6 months time. The progress which the world has seen in terms of digitization is worth roughly next 4 years to 5 years time what was going to happen. So obviously we have been pretty digital, but we have adapted ourselves, right? One of couple of things in the manufacturing sector, we have a lot of meetings which we are used to having face-to-face meetings, right? Control room meetings, review of the production slots and all. So those all have been now moved into online. Obviously, nobody had thought of it 9 months back that, these meetings can actually be held digitally, but without having face-to-face interaction. But over a period of time, people have realized that these digital meetings can be as effective as a face-to-face meeting. Now, there is an important part of it. This is effective because it's the same team, roughly the same team. When you try to put something new, then you may miss that part of bonhomie and people kind of interacting with each other, sharing a meal, talking to each other. But apart from that, we have seen that the digital forms of interaction in terms of meeting, in terms of face-to-face interactions, which all happen digitally, has been happening. We have accelerated our investment into telematics, wherein a lot of our customers who used to say visit the plant sites and all to see the progress, now they can see the progress sitting in their office or in their homes on the mobile phone, how many hours the machines have worked, what has been the fuel consumption, why the machine has stopped, has the machine run for 12 hours or 14 hours. So those kind of processes are being implemented and accelerated, right? It was already in the plan, it has just been accelerated. In the premises, again, I was kind of pleasantly surprised at the speed at which the new innovations have been put in by different industry stakeholders, right? And very basic things like, in the last 6 to 9 months time, every single touch point has been converted into a non-touch point access, right? Be it your, where you go and take a tea or a coffee or a machine, everything has been, So those are the ways you are trying to safeguard the health and safety of your employees by implementing those very small ideas. But, those have been, mind-boggling. Some of those ideas have been mind-boggling in terms of how you don't need to touch anything and still kind of carry on with your normal day-to-day activities. And then obviously, being in the manufacturing segment, but we have parts of the business who can work from home. So basically managing that flow. I mean, we were pretty much, as I said in the beginning, we were pretty much very much digital. So everything was on a server, right? So it was not a big problem for us to move our engineering resources to work from home or move our technical support to work from home. So they could access everything online. But then, I'll say the biggest changes have been kind of, this implementation of digital meetings, and then, whatever we are now investing in terms of the technology, in terms of digital marketing, right? We have moved from mostly, going into the industry magazines to more to digital platforms, right? In terms of our marketing techniques, Google Ads. And then obviously in terms of telematics, there's a big focus in terms of giving that access to the data to your customers without them need to visit the sites.
Interesting. So you're also doing your maintenance remotely?
Not yet, but yes, that is something which is being at this moment, piloted at various of the sites in terms of, with the AI, but that is something which is probably going to take a few more months' time for us to kind of implement within India.
The next step is probably predictive maintenance, and then being able to figure out how to do it remotely.
Yeah, I mean, those predictive maintenance and all can be done with the telematics, because that will give the feedback that your machine needs a scheduled maintenance on the engine or a wear part change in the next few many hours. So that is already part of the telematics, in terms of scheduled maintenance. But then when you take it to the next level, wherein somebody sitting in the factory premises or an office premises can see what the customer technician is seeing on the machine and then guiding him to the next step, is something which we are trying to implement over the next few months' time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ramakrishnan, coming to you, the new normal has really turned our head, right? Making workforce transformation extremely important. And we spoke about the people aspect of it several times. So from an MNC standpoint, I mean, what initiatives have you sort of taken for your workforce in India? Have they been sort of driven by a global mandate, or are they very India-specific sort of policies? You've worked on given our ground realities here?
I think in terms of workforce management, one of the things that was required is honestly in terms of training and development. This is health, safety, and those areas need to be sort of trained correctly. In the manufacturing of products like insulation material and solvents and paints, obviously we use a lot of outside processing units as well. So one of the things that we got into is we have digitalized that whole setup as well. So what happens really in our external manufacturing units as well as in our units, they're all digitalized in terms of the steps that we use from the point of view of manufacturing. The workforce, of course, went through a bit of a difficulty for an industry like ours because we do employ a lot of contract laborers, which was obviously not available. So we had to get a new set of people and then engage them into a training and mechanism. So we invested a lot of effort in terms of training, socially take care of them because they were in difficult times in terms of economic mechanism. So those are the areas that we did. So we did a few things in our units, with the 3 units in Chennai, and we did a couple of things in all our outside processing units, which are in Bangalore and 2 of them in Hyderabad as well, so that we could actually integrate the whole manufacturing setup correctly. And that obviously is going to pay us in the future because this is something that we would have not done at this pace, but for, being pushed to this difficulties.
Thank you. Mr. Murthy, coming to you and a question specific about the pharma industry that you're a part of, or the larger pharma industry. And there are some companies who've sort of seen a sudden surge in demand, of course, depending on what kind of products you produce. And some, of course, have had a much harder time because many other treatments in healthcare have sort of taken a backseat because everything had been sort of COVID focused, right? So how has this experience been for the overall pharma sector? I mean, you produce something which sort of used by across the industry, right? Glass products.
Yes.
And how have you dealt with this sudden, volatile demand across the industry, predicting things, being able to match up your supply to the demand, and even now, right? I mean, we just spoke about the vaccines that are being expected over the next few months. You're suddenly going to see a surge where the demand will be in millions. How are you dealing with this in this period internally, and how is technology playing a role in helping you sort of?
I guess if people have contradictory views, then perhaps all of them are right because it has been that way. Depending on which sector and which particular segment of the industry that you are catering to, depends on how it has been in the last few months. For us, we are into parenteral drugs, specialty, high-value drugs kind of, supply. So this is something that is more or less neutral, and most important is, as an organization, we are a very fast-growing organization. Last few years, we have grown at a CAGR of 30-40%. So not mean by any imagination. So what is happening is, we are kind of in that mode already. So we are already cruising at a high velocity. So anything that is a little deviation here and there, it's natural for us to absorb it. So in our case, we are kind of prepared to take on the additional demand because we are already planning for 30-40% jump as an organic growth for us, and plus the buffer that we have created. So that is going to come in handy now to serve this additional demand. And you mentioned in millions, it is in billions. So so the number is vast, and the challenge is indeed very important. But the technology part, coming to that, this industry is already high tech because all the machines are wired, all the data is on cloud. So we generally, at the management level, we go to the plant to bring about the cultural, aspect to put everybody together. Otherwise, the reporting, and day-to-day management is well driven, and it is already in place. What has changed is that because of everything that is so well oiled, everything is running so well, the interactions, kind of go down in person. So that is something that, we want to bring it back. So we are using, small work groups and engaging them and using, Teams and similar platforms to be able to talk to each other. What we have seen in the past few days is that the kind of the discipline that is normally not there on online meetings, that has gone up drastically. So people sometimes they pretend to be on meetings and they do keep doing something else. So that kind of culture is probably setting in well now, and people are responding well. They realize that this is how it is going to be in future, at least for some time. So that kind of awareness has gone up. So all of that is perhaps coming together very well. So I'm very positive and hopeful.
Interesting. So you're saying this new lifestyle has settled in with people, and that's a great thing. And most importantly, what I took out of this was that as a company, you were already prepared for scale. You were, growing at 30-40%. That means you were already invested a certain amount in your capacity, right?
Yes. And pharma is, as I mentioned, this is a very specialty business. So you cannot, decide today and scale up tomorrow. So it takes a lot of planning, and the validation cycles and everything is so long in our industry, is that, we have to be well prepared in advance. And perhaps all of this has come together very well for us, and we are absolutely prepared for the future.
But it's hard to believe that a lot of companies would have that much excess capacity to be able to sort of cater to a sudden jump in demand because of COVID, right? You normally wouldn't have 30-40% excess capacity.
No, in our case, we were building up capacities for this increasing demand. Yes, but in general, if I may speak for all the glass industry, what happens is this glass industry is also a seasonal business for us in India, because in sometimes you have a higher demand and sometimes it is low, and that buffer is always available. So that's always inbuilt, as a business model. And that you get to use in situations like this, and in our case, that has complemented with our growth rate. So this is somehow we were more prepared than perhaps others to embrace this change.
Mr. Lalwani, what kind of trends do you see in the confectionery or a larger sort of food industry post COVID? How is digitization helping you stay on top of these trends and appeal to changing consumer habits and expectation? You already spoke of intense competition in your segment, where you sort of need to react at a very fast rate. Are you looking at technology in a way to help you sort of cater that changing sort of expectations faster? Come out with quicker product cycles, R&D, and quicker products that hit the market. How are you doing?
Actually, as I told you, that because of the competition, we have always got to go in for something new technologies and new products, new varieties. This is the demand of the day, And as you go on with the new products, you sustain your business. Otherwise, you are back. So we have always got to see something new in our business. Some new products going into R&D and coming out with some new products where the demand is created and sustained. Yes, we always look for something new. As I already told you, every month we bring 1 or 2 new products in our line, and that is how we sustain our business. And the customers are also happy to have some new products, whether in compound chocolates or in wafers or in sugar boiled confectionery or what so on. And we try to, we try to keep up our trend with coming out with some new products, new varieties. See, the customer always demands something new. They even say, let the item be old, the clothes should be new. The outer look should be new.
Packaging.
It should be liked by everyone, the design and all. So we take a lot of care for packaging, because packaging is also one of greatest part in our industry. Though we are manufacturers, but we also look for designing part. We have our own designing unit within ourselves, and we also have our R&D department. And this is how we sustain our business,
Mr. Palakil, please take us through some of the misconceptions organizations have about making this digital shift, right? there are companies such as Dynamics, right? I mean, on the very higher end of this digital transformation, and even the pharma business. But how do we decide where to implement sort of a digital process or a tool versus where else not? And there's also the question between cost and innovation, right? I mean, that's major at a time you're trying to conserve cash. So how do you decide for this?
Yeah, see, that's a very interesting question, Raudra. I think our experience all comes from learning from customers, right? During various stages, we've been in this market for the last 40 years, and we take customers' feedback very, very seriously into our product development and ensure that we deliver a product that the customer is actually looking at, or the industry is actually looking at. Right? So to keep it very simple, I think the first probably misconception that I have personally seen is during the digital transformation or the digital adoption is, people think that digital transformation is just about updating or changing systems, right? Well, actually, digital transformation is a journey, right? And this journey is just as important as the destination, right? So what's the destination? The destination is to become an intelligent enterprise, right? Eventually, all customers, and our esteemed panel here also would agree with me that all customers have goals to keep their customers and employees happy or satisfied, right? That's the overall goal that we have. And how do we do that? We need to have an enterprise that is intelligent. So how do we do that, Raudra? You asked how does SAP help with such misconception or getting that myth busted is. We work with customers to actually create a roadmap, right? A pathway that would capture a digital transformation. It is not that while SAP can provide a plethora of technologies, and obviously there is a priority that we need to take into account. Then we need to take into account what is important for the organization, looking at the goals, etc. And we have a roadmap which not only helps organization fulfill short-term goals, but also look at the long-term goals. Because digital transformation is not something that you can always keep revisiting every 2 or 3 years, right? Like I mentioned in the previous, the comment. It's very important to choose the right partnership. So what we do is we do this roadmap exercise for 25 different industries, right, across various sub-industries as well that falls under these the main 25 industries. One shouldn't actually digitally transform just for the sake of transformation's sake. You would want to actually digitally transform so that your enterprise becomes more agile, it becomes more faster, it becomes more nimble, and eventually it's more optimized and becomes more easier, right? So that is one of the myths that I have seen. Probably the second biggest myth is organizations also tend to believe that digital transformation, it can wait, right? We can probably postpone, we can probably look at it at a later stage, etc. So the point to that is it's no secret that technology has been changing exponentially, right? At a rate that not me or you can actually think of, because the way things were 5 years back is not how it is. And that change is now shrinking, right? The 5 years gap is just shrinking into a yearly or 2 yearly affair where technology is continuously changing. So what it actually means is this transformation will only get harder down the road. While probably the company is running in a neutral gear, a competitor of theirs would be running at an accelerated transformation phase. So digital transformation will absolutely not get easier to implement or not get cheaper if I just keep postponing or say that it can wait, right? Because the biggest loss amongst this, what the company experiences, is the market opportunities, right? If I had done it at the right time, probably I could have captured more market, more than what my competitor does. So sum it up, what we believe is that companies across all industries, they don't have the time to wait. But the sooner we do it, the better it is for us to remain competitive and to gain that edge towards our market. The third and last myth, Raudra, is what I've also heard is that digital transformation is typically for matters to only technology or software companies, right? I've heard a few customers who actually tell this, or the partners that we work with actually come back to us, right? So you would see, you don't need to be a company in the Silicon Valley, or you don't need to be that hot startup to actually embrace digital technology. See, way back in 2015, right? Disney, if you see, they announced that they're investing heavily on Internet of Things, IoT sensors for its parks, right? Like the Disney World. They had this concept of coming up with RFID tags or bands, which can act as like, a hotel room key. It can also like, act as a ride ticket. It can also act as a payment gateway, etc. This paradigm shift of thinking, like, of adopting that, actually the ease of use pleases one's customers, right? If I were a customer who get into the Disney World and I get it so easy and so nice, it's a great experience that I leave. And it makes me go back to Disney World again and again, right? So customer experience is superiorly, like, important. So these three myths, to sum it up, like, one is digital transformation, like, it's not something that it can wait. It's not just restricted to any kind of industries. It applies to all different industries. And it is not just like, changing systems, it's a journey.
Right, right. And I think to your second point, something that Mr. Shekhar, I think, mentioned that some companies have been able to compress the 3-4 years of sort of digitization process into this last 6 months. So that has been a great sort of leap forward, one would say. Wonderful. So my last question really for all our speakers.
Rudra, can I?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I thought I'll come up with a different view on digitalization if you allow me.
Yes, sir. Please.
So I think, if you look at our country, we have industries of all nature. We have the small scale, we have the medium scale. You've got people who use large amount of manpower, the people who do things in their setup very traditional. So let me give you a couple of examples, right? While, as Vinod said, it's not about digitalization of everything. Anything that you see around, I think today the objective would be, can I digitalize it very quickly? There is a bit of a behavioral angle and there is a bit of a cultural angle as well. So let's take the role of a typical salesman today, right? So all industries have salespeople who go and meet customers, right? So I think we used to have courses and courses teaching the art of selling, right? Now, how do you sell sitting in front of a customer, right? So the face-to-face selling is here to stay. It's not going to go away, right? So like say in our setup, I mean, this is not a very big company, but we have about 9,000 dealers and about 400 distributors. So one of the digitalization we did very quickly is to put all of them into an e-commerce platform so that they could order every day morning at 8 o'clock and we could supply them the next day morning 8 o'clock. In the process, what really happened is we lost the connect between the behavioral aspect of the dealer and the company. That's what we lost, right? So it's not that the e-commerce is going to take away every aspect of business and land everything else into Excel spreadsheets where we can quickly take action. That's one thing possibly we should be a little worried about, because over digitalization in spaces where we shouldn't digitalize is obviously not the way to go, because then you lose some skill sets in the country which is available right now. And I think the fear of job losses, right? I think we have close to about 400 people working the sales team. One of the first thing that the challenges was that if you put all this into e-commerce, what's going to happen to these people, at the frontline sales people who are anyway not allowed to now go and visit shops? What is going to happen to their employment, right? So there are some challenges which come along with it. Maybe we'll have to handle it differently. And that's what we did. I mean, so I just giving you a different point of view, because from an industry standpoint, the paint, hardware, construction material industry is still very traditional. We make material from raw material, ship it to distributor, distributor sells it to a retailer, retail sells to a painter, and painter uses it at home. And that's the traditional route it takes. That has not changed despite COVID or in spite of COVID. Right? So that remains. So we had to operate within that sphere. So I thought I'll just place that point of view as well.
Interesting. But a quick thought there, though. I mean, if you do unlock some value at a point, that value can always be invested elsewhere, right? I mean, for example, and there's also the question of skilling, right? I mean, digitization is a wave that is sort of not that none of us can solve. I mean, we are from the media industry. We are grappling with digitization at the same time as a print media business, etc. A very, very rapid pace over the past few months, especially when newspapers are not getting delivered, right, to many of our houses. But I think one of the realizations that has also come about is that all of us who are sort of comfortable with a certain kind of skill set environment, we need to be multi-skilled. We need to be able to understand this process and move up the value chain so that the value that gets unlocked there is invested elsewhere as well. And maybe that's of benefit. These are just a sort of thought here. One last question maybe to everybody. If you had to outline your one long-term and one short-term goal as you sort of emerge out of this difficult pandemic period? What would that be? Maybe Dr. Malhotra, if you could talk about a short-term and a long-term goal.
A short-term goal is really looking at the challenge and opportunities before you and optimizing your business to come out better. A long-term goal is the permanent changes you can make. So I'll give you a simple example because this is theory. A short-term goal, in aerospace, we've seen a deep compression in demand for our commercial aerospace business. And what we very quickly did was pivot and maximize the production we could do in the defense side. So what was very interesting was even when we were working, but when it was all in lockdown, we never went below 90% of our normal sales. Although the commercial part of our business, which used to be 55%, was down by like half or maybe more than half. But we were able to almost equally compensate it with the defense production that we had. And we pulled in sales that was pushed out. We got some new quick orders. So that's the quick, short survival thing. The long-term stuff is the kind of stuff I was talking about, how your buildings will look. For example, when we move to our new campus, it's not just that the buildings will be the white collar, because we'll need less space. Suddenly, our investment cycle will be less in office blocks because we don't need so much space. We don't need these compartmentalized traditional offices. So it'll be more fluid. So I think all of us, all companies will have these longer term and immediate term. Immediate is about optimizing yourself for now.
Mr. Shekhar, your views on this, a short-term and a long-term sort of goal?
I mean, the short term is going to be, as Mr. Malhotra said, optimizing your business for the current challenges, which includes the supply chain stabilization, which includes the cash flow management. Again, the business we are in, we are to manage the cross-border movement because, we have to fly in people to service our customers in Africa and Middle East and all. So there are challenges which you are dealing on a day-to-day basis in managing your workforce in terms of their travel, in terms of their safety, right? Long term, again, being a multinational company, health and safety of the team members still remains the number one, right? Pre-COVID, during COVID and post-COVID, I think there'll be a lot more focus now, right? So the health and safety of the employees will still remain the number one long-term focus. But I think with the COVID hitting us, I think another aspect of it which will possibly get added is that the continued focus on digitization and digital marketing and ways and means to do your traditional things in a much more efficient and a manner without involving a lot of physical interaction. I think that is going to be also one of the long-term things, because although the world will change with the vaccine coming, with people getting better and things, the risk going down. But I don't believe that it is going to come back to the pre-COVID times at any point of time near future. So it's going to remain, parts of what we are doing today, parts of what we have learned that COVID has taught us, the businesses to the individuals. I think we are going to carry it forward for the next 10, 15, 20 years time to go. Even basic things I see, I don't see mask going away, right? You will probably be one of those Southeast Asian countries wherein a majority of the population will still wear masks even after the vaccine. So there's a lot of things which are going to remain with us. And I think digitization, digital ways and means to move into digital ways of life will be one of those things.
I think as long as you're living in Delhi, masks are not going away for a while. Yeah, but Mr. Murthy, over to you. A short term and a long term challenge.
The short term goal is to continue the momentum. We are growing very fast, and what a pandemic like this can do is suddenly apply some brakes. Essentially because we are not growing because the sector is growing organically that much. We are basically acquiring market by doing better sales. So that is something that can take a hit during such times. So we are trying and finding better ways to engage with our customers. Ours is a very B2B kind of a thing, so we have to go and interact, and that is how we are going to expand our business. So that is something perhaps is the first priority for us in the short term. And I like to believe that this is not about pandemic and the immediate aftermath. This is something that is very, very long term, because this is something that is going to repeat more often, because we are traveling more. The spread is very easy to happen, in this kind of situation. So I believe this kind of pandemics will keep recurring in different names. There are many mutations of the corona itself. So I believe, we have a long-term strategy. All the businesses perhaps will look at, better ways to do risk assessment. Risk assessment has always been the buzzword last few years, to try and establish continuity. But now it will become more serious. It will stop being a buzzword and become a reality, and people start working on risk assessment, better, analysis. And I believe most of the important factor is eventually is that, you build confidence among your own people that, an organization in such a situation can take care of you. So that will allow, people to reciprocate much better. So we are trying to do that, on day-to-day basis, and we have a very young group. So we have tried to, isolate the older generation with the newer generation, and all these activities that we are performing. We meet every day practically for 20-25 minutes discussing COVID and the actions to take. So all of these are confidence building measures that are going a long way to try and build a culture of resilience overall. So that is, I think, a couple of things that we would like to be doing strategically.
See, as I told you, that short term is just not to go in for R&D and develop new items, but we look forward for new technologies, new machines, new products, and coming out with some new ideas which the customers like, for a long-term basis. And that's what we are doing. And I'm happy to tell you that during this COVID period also, we have not lost our business. I mean, we may not have gained much as we projected, but we have gained a few percentage of it, but we have not lost. That is only because of the quality product. And I always believe, as you know, that for a film to get success, you need three things: entertainment, entertainment, entertainment. But for a businessman to get success, you also need three things. That is, a quality product with a reasonable price, and service. See, you need service. I'm happy to tell you that I stock about 1,000 tons of material in my godown every day. And I get the orders in the morning, and by evening the goods are dispatched. And in India, all my customers, they say there is only one company, confectionery company in India, which is Prayag, where you give order at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock you will find your truck coming out of the factory. And I'm so happy that my customers are also very happy with this. And I thank all my customers who have brought me to this stage as of now. And thank you so much, all your panelists who are here on the screen. And Mr. Rudra, thank you so much for inviting us to tell something about us. Really great. We are very happy.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ramakrishnan, a quick word on your short and a long-term goal as we sort of emerge out of it.
I would guess the short term is more or less similar to what the other panelists have mentioned, except that I had also adaptability as one of the additional requirements, and how do you get customer access very quickly. In the long term, I honestly wouldn't like to really call it long term, but I would rather like to do long term in buckets of 6 months. Just to ensure that I would guess that the economy, local and the global, will recover, but there will be some level of uneven recovery. So I think we'll have to watch, how this. But I guess there are three important things that I would do. I would definitely ensure that I have a more flexible workforce. So that's the learning I got. I would have a smarter supply chain, and I would try to, lower cost base over the long term. And the last but not the least, also try and see whether I could do more collaborative partnerships in our method of really manufacturing or go-to-market mechanisms.
Thank you, sir. I think this brings us to the end of our discussion. Thank you all for joining us today. I want to especially thank all our panelists for taking the time out to share their insights with us today evening. Last but not the least, big thank you to SAP for partnering with us for this series as well. This is us signing off. Thanks, everyone.